Hello, this is Mark from the Organ Files podcast. We wanted to do a pre-disclaimer today on this special and emotional episode. Some stories need to be told, and in turn, some stories need to be heard. This episode contains an interview that is a true story and is a person that is directly impacted by an unsolved crime. Because of that, we want to direct you to uncovered.com. This is a website you can go to follow, share, join, learn, and contribute. The best part about uncovered.com is it's also a community of support for family members traveling this road so they're not alone. There's a family member only group as well. Finally, if you have any information leading to this case, you're directed to contact the Coos County Sheriff's Office at 541-396-7800. Thank you and enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Organ Files podcast. First, our disclaimer. We are novice podcasters for entertainment and knowledge. Today is a very special podcast. It's our first on-the-road podcast. We're at the Klamath County Library in Klamath Falls, Oregon, with a very special guest today. First, my co-host, Elliot Bowman.
Thank you, Mark. Certainly new waters for Mark and I. We've done, a handful of episodes around cold case, even cold case cowboys. But this is the first time where we've been able to kind of get on location and talk to somebody who's close to a story of an unsolved murder mystery. And we're just super grateful to have somebody take their time out of their day and talk to us about her and her life and her story. And I'd like to introduce Lori Merriam.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So we can't wait to get to know you and your story. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe just telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of what brought us all to here together today.
Well, thank you guys for having me on your show. I appreciate it. It's a long story, so I'll try and put it in a nutshell.
No problem.
Go for it. Take time.
So I was born to teenage parents in Idaho. So Daddy left to go out of state to work. And Mom never heard from him again. So Mom was sent to the Unwed Moms home in Boise, Idaho, called Booth Memorial Home for Unwed Mothers. So she was there for a few months with other unwed moms, and she gave birth to me. Then I was adopted as an infant.
So was that her choice to go there?
No. I'm trying to think, how do I word this?
Yeah.
No, she wanted to keep me.
Oh, she did?
Yeah. But because of family dynamics, she was not able to keep me. So she gave me up for adoption. I was adopted into a very loving family. My adoptive dad especially, his name was Dennis, and he was very supportive in me pursuing my birth family. And I always knew from as far back as I can remember that I was adopted. So I always knew that I had parents that gave me life, but then I had parents who were raising me because for whatever reason, those other parents weren't able to raise me. So that's how that story goes.
And that was in 71, right? You were born in 71?
1971,
okay.
Yeah. So I searched for my birth family, and I got it to within a 150-mile radius from Boise, where I was born and raised.
Okay.
And then in 1988, I hired a PI named Mr. X, who gave me my birth mom. Yeah, very mysterious.
Mr. X.
Is that what was on his business card, like Mr. X?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I love it.
So because I said, "What's your real name?" And he told me, "I can't tell you my real name.
Really?
I have to go by Mr. X."
Wow.
Really? That's interesting.
So I had saved up money for my senior trip and decided to use that to find my birth family. So I used that money to pay him, and within 24 hours, he had my birth mom's name, the whole family, actually. So we gave her a call, connected with her, and then I spent time, that was in the summer of 88 and Christmas of 88. I spent time with her on my Christmas vacation in my senior year. Spent time with her and her family, got to know them, got to meet my dad's parents at that time. And then my mom, for my Christmas present, gave me a black and white photo of my birth dad and said, "Hey, this is your birth dad." She said, "I'm sorry it's not color," because back in the day she couldn't afford a color photo.
Right.
But the original photo is in color. So she made a copy of a black and white photo of him, gave it to me, and said, "I just want you to know that though it's black and white and his hair looks dark, it's as red as your hair.
Oh, wow.
So just know he has red hair.
Yeah.
And that, she said, when you were born, she said it was a very difficult labor. I won't go into details.
Right.
But she said, I looked over before they took you away from me. And she said, you had bright, flaming red hair.
Oh, wow.
And she said, I didn't know if you ever kept it or not. So she said, since you kept it, I'll tell you who your dad is. So she told me, and then I met his parents. And
Oh, wow.
so that's the story,
So
pretty much. And since I knew from that time, I've been exclusively searching for him. So about
Right.
33 years,
Wow.
I looked for him.
So where did you meet your mom at?
She came to my house in Boise.
Oh,
She's
wow.
from southern Idaho, a small agricultural farming town.
Wow.
So her and one of her sisters came up with my half-brother, who was about 7 or 8 at the time, I believe. So we spent the weekend together, and then she invited me to come spend time with them on Thanksgiving, and then I spent a whole week with just my maternal birth family for Christmas in 1988.
Wow. So like the anticipation of knowing that your mom is like driving down the road almost to your house, like what is that kind of emotion like, knowing that I'm about to meet?
Oh my gosh. You
My
see me
birth
now, I'm
Yeah.
flushed and I'm all,
I can,
at the tears
Right.
and just the instant she walked in.
right.
And it was instant connection. It was like that puzzle piece I'd always been missing. Who am I? Why do I look the way I look?
Right.
Why do I talk the way I talk or even move?
Right.
And I spent some time with my uncle at his place for a couple months, just in 2018, I think it was, because my mom was sick. So I was spending time with them. And he said, kiddo, you were not raised with your mother, but you are so much like her, it's scary because we are just so much. And when I was younger and I'd spend time with her, I'd just pop into town and say, hey, she was about 2 hours away. I said, I took the day off of work. I drove over here. You want to have lunch? Yeah. And we'd have lunch together. We'd just hang out. But people would see us together and they're like, oh my gosh, is this your older sister? Because I'm taller than my mom.
Yeah.
She barely squeaks 5 foot, And she'll look at them and look at me and we'll both just smile. She goes, no, this is my daughter, Lori. So she loves it.
Wow.
But, yeah.
And on the other side, the reverse side, what the emotion must have been for her too.
Oh, I can't even imagine
Right.
because she never wanted to give me up.
Right.
And she told me she thought about me all these years and wondered what my life was like, what I look like, my interests. So, I mean, as a mom myself, I can't imagine giving up my child unwillingly, pretty much.
Right.
It was just a forced issue.
Yeah. So I'm sorry if you've already said this, but how hard was it to connect and find her?
Let's see. So I basically started my search when I was 12, and I'd read a lot of books. And some of those books in the back would have people you could contact and connect with. So I kind of went down the line. And it's a small group. Back in the day, it was a small group of people because I had to come to the library. I'd do the census search.
Oh, wow.
I'd try and figure out, I didn't have any names. I had paperwork that showed me, okay, your mom was 15, your dad was a teenager, but never really gave me anything. So I assumed he was about the same age. Told me my mom had so many siblings, male, female, what my grandma did for a living. So I kind of could narrow it down to certain areas. And then it's like, okay, now do I go north or do I go south and east? So then it was just trying to figure out where those types of industrial positions were and then going from there.
Wow.
So I got within a 150-mile radius after doing years of research. So let's see, I started when I was 12. I called Mr. X when I had just turned 17. So about 5 years of my own searching.
Wow. Did you ever get to the point where you felt like it was just never going to be, like you never were going to find her? Or you just were like, this is my goal. I'm going to find her no matter what.
Pretty much it's my goal. I'm going to find her no matter what.
Love it.
But at the same time, it's always that little nagging voice in the back.
Right.
It's never going to work. Why do you keep
Right.
going?
Right.
And by that time, my main supporter had passed away. So my dad was my main supporter. And I don't know if he was more excited or if I was. because he was so supportive. And same thing, where'd you get your red hair?
Right.
You know, why do you like this? And I didn't fit in really with my adoptive family. They all looked different than I did. So it was just even different thought processes.
Mm-hmm.
So when my adoptive father, Dennis, passed away, I was on my own. He was the main supporter of me looking.
Mm.
So he was the glue of our family.
Wow.
So it was tough.
I can't imagine. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So your relationship with your mom today is good, or
Mhm.
yeah? That's
Yeah.
good.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
My mom and I, we talk quite often,
Oh, good.
and I still pop in on her every once in a blue
Right.
moon. She's still in Idaho, so I
Right.
pop in. I stay in touch with my half brother, and
Right.
he lives in Texas.
You were 17. You found your mom, and then from there, she showed you pictures of your dad, and then
Just one picture.
One picture.
One picture.
And at that point, she didn't know what happened to your dad, too, right? I mean,
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So what she told me was that she was pregnant. So here we're going to get into a lot of the rumors. And
yeah. Right.
so there's always a little bit of truth in the rumors. So I will tell you a lot of the rumors. Now that we've come forward today, I have more of a picture of the truth. Okay. So it's way different than the rumors. And a lot of times you tell those rumors to pacify other people or to make sure that you can survive and live because of the turmoil within your own household. So the rumor was that Daddy had tried to catch her before he left, and she was upset with him, so she didn't want to talk to him. So she ran home, and I'm like, okay. And she goes, and then I never saw him again. I don't know what happened. But here come all these rumors so when I met his family, I met his parents. I didn't meet any of the siblings, and I knew there were more brothers and sisters, but for whatever reason, that was always more shadowed or not allowed for whatever the reason. I may have met a couple of them, not knowing they were my aunts and uncles because we're all about the same age. That was tough. So my grandfather, his dad, was a very kind, gentle, very passive man, huge, huge heart. In fact, it was kind of like once he and I met, it was like I reminded him so much of his son, of Wint, that he just kind of bonded to me. And he was a woodworker. He was retired, so he did a lot of woodworking. So he made me a wood planter out of one piece of wood. And he was missing fingers on one hand because of an industrial accident he had when he was younger. So he would whittle wood, and he whittled out of one piece of wood a chain, a real long chain that whittled or that he worked into a huge wooden planter for me. And it was all one piece. And I'm like, man,
That's
Grandpa,
cool.
that must have taken years to do. And he goes, no, it didn't take too awful long, but it was just all one piece attached. Beautiful. Yeah, it was gorgeous. I loved it. So I would hang my plants in it, and that's always meant something to me.
Right. Yeah.
So, but he passed away in 96.
Okay.
But the family rumors are, oh, your dad is, he was a drug informant for the police here in our small town. I'm like, I don't know that that's true, but a lot of times I just let people tell me things that way, even if I don't believe it, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's, always plausible. Oh, he ran away with the circus, or he became a 1% biker. He left and worked on a family ranch in Montana, because I guess we have family in Montana and they're ranchers. So he disappeared and did that. All the different stories of him running away. There's another one that, oh no, he left and he joined the Army. And then my grandma's twin sister swears up and down that she saw my dad coming off at the Boise airport. It used to be a little podunk airport, kind of like small here in Klamath. My grandma's sister said, no, I swear that was Wint. I know I saw him. He had red hair. It just looked just like him. And for years, I kind of went based on that because other rumors, you just try and take bits and pieces of everything because there's truths woven in there somewhere. So I had to learn how to dissect the rumors. and figure out what was true. And I found out that 99.99 and 9/9 of it was not true. So just trying to hold on to whatever truth I thought I had out of those rumors, I think kept me going.
Right.
And a lot of those rumors, if someone's making up all these rumors, there's a reason. Is it true? Or are you making yourself look better than what you really are?
Right.
And that's what I always came back to, is they always changed. It morphed into something else, or almost the same exact story, but slightly different.
Yeah.
And that's why I knew it wasn't truth, because truth doesn't change. It doesn't get embellished. I guess it could, but most of the time it doesn't. So I found out, oh, he ran away to Portland, or no, he ran away here, or he was such a troubled child, and all this and that. And what I found out, or he got in an argument with his mom, so he left, or he got in an argument, then it was his dad and left. It was never the same person. It was always something just slightly different. And I found out really by interviewing people who he really was and what was really going on that caused him to leave. So one of those rumors where I talked about the ranch in Montana, he was at a ranch, but it wasn't a family ranch. He was sent off to the Idaho Youth Ranch at least one of those times, if not more, for troubled boys. But I found out, too, that Grandma did not like being a mom, and that one of the younger sisters was raising all the siblings.
Oh, wow.
Because Grandma was busy being Grandma. So, yeah, he was at a ranch, but he was at the Idaho Youth Ranch. But his siblings were told that he ran away. Well, he didn't run away. He was just a few miles up the road.
Wow.
Yeah. So learning all these rumors and trying to dissect them was very difficult over the years.
And he was 17 when he ran away? Is that
He
right?
was actually he was 16.
16? Okay.
Yeah, he was born, we think, because no one will give me all his information.
Right.
We put down October 4th, 1954. So I'm going with that. That's on his death certificate. And I don't know. We're fighting for records. His mom, his family won't help me get any of that. So I can't have it.
Right.
Because he's not legally my dad.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Are people reluctant to give you information? Even people that you interview, are people reluctant to give you answers?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
One lady I talked to, I won't say her name, used to be the neighbor of my grandparents and watched the kids grow up. And she had kids the same age. So she got to see actually what transpired in the household, because her kids would play with their kids and she would see things that would happen. So another rumor was, Daddy had actually come home from the Idaho Youth Ranch and he was in the middle of the road. So I asked this person, well, what was he doing in the middle of the road? Why wasn't he, at his home? She's like, well, he was at his home in the middle of the road. She said that his mom would not let him on the property because he had grown his hair out shoulder length. So that is the argument he actually got into. And I'm not sure if Grandpa sided with Grandma or if he just stayed out of it, because I think that's what he tended to do, because he tried to protect and shield the kids as much as possible. But he was not allowed on the property, and that is when he decided he was leaving and not coming back. So, argument with Grandma over
because of some hair.
Wow.
Yeah. But back in the day, you were considered a troubled kid if you grew out your hair.
What?
Yeah. Long hair was not acceptable, even though that was the in thing in the early 70s.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of the other generation or parents did not like it because you were rebellious.
I was going to say, it looks like a rebellious, just growing your hair out. So if you weren't clean cut, you were looked at, you're a rebel. Boy, times have changed.
Yeah.
My gosh, interesting. So he was coming back from the Idaho Youth Ranch.
For troubled boys.
So how was he traveling? How did he get from the Idaho Youth Ranch to...
Another rumor. So I'll tell you the rumor first and then the truth. So the rumor was he hitchhiked. So that's where we get, originally the Oregonian posted, 50-year-old case of hitchhiker ID'd. He supposedly hitchhiked. And back in the day, that was what everybody did. Come to find out, he didn't hitchhike.
Okay.
His older sister got him a ride from southern Idaho, where he lived, to Boise, where she was living. She herself was still a teenager. She was about a year and a half older than my dad. So she got him to Boise. Now, this is where the issue comes in. He disappears from her place. So I was told he spent a couple weeks there, give or take. And then when I finally met her, she said, oh no, he only stayed 3 days. So again, another rumor. Mm-hmm. So all these years thinking, I met her, actually I corresponded with her since about 2003. Didn't meet her until 2016.
Wow.
And then her and I, spent a weekend together at a family member's funeral. But anyway, weird way to meet a family member.
Right.
But anyway, some stuff I can't talk about because of our conversation. I can't let the cat out of the bag yet. But so I was trying to get the age of her siblings, how many there were, who was born, what order. And I told her, I said, well, your mom told me that my dad ran away to Portland. She looked at me. She goes, he never ran away. I said, he didn't. And she said, no, he never ran away. And I went, huh. Okay. I said, well, that's what your mom says. I said, Grandma says that. So that's interesting. And I said, well, where'd he go? She said, Coos Bay. And I went, huh. So it wasn't Portland? She goes, no, he was always in Coos Bay. And I went, okay. So I kind of kept that in the back of my mind. Yeah. But I had been told Portland for 30 years by this time, probably about 25 years. So I'm like, well, there's a discrepancy. Here's another rabbit hole I'm going to have to go down and figure out.
Were you told Portland before he was found?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was told Portland, that he ran away to Portland 2 or 3 times and that they always brought him back. Okay. Except the last time he ran away, supposedly to Portland, and was never heard from again.
Yeah, why would he pick Coos Bay?
Well, that was my question. Right. So I had to do a little bit of research. So the research I didn't do much when his sister told me, because I thought, I don't know. So I just kind of let it lie until we actually found where he was. And then I started doing more research. But from the research I've done now that we know is he went there for work. There was a huge logging and fishing industry back in the day. Right. So, and I can't give too much detail on that either because the investigation's still open and active. Right. But I do have more answers. I just can't say anything at the moment.
So when you were first given his photo, did you think like, okay, well, now I want to try to find who my dad is or find out where he is?
Well, I always wanted to find both my parents. Right. It was just my birth mom was the first one found. Right, right. And there's nobody on my birth certificate as a father. That's why I got all the information on my mom.
So it was really, I see. Yeah.
So once I knew who my dad was, I'm like, aha, here I come. Watch out.
Right. Wow. So when did you find out like who your dad, like what his name was and like that sort of...
Well, Mom told me who he was. I think it was Thanksgiving. She actually told me who he was, and that's where I met his family. And at Christmas, I was given his picture. Gotcha. So I know it's a lot of information.
No, it's good. It's really interesting.
So I found out who he was around Thanksgiving time.
And even at that time, they didn't know where he was either, right?
Oh, no. They had no clue. And that's where all the rumors started because I started pressing.
Oh, really?
Like, where's my dad?
And they weren't even, I mean, were they curious too? Like, they weren't curious at all? Like, what happened to Winston?
Nope. Because the story they've spun all these years is he was a troubled kid. He was a pain in the butt, to put it nicely. He wasn't worth having around. Who cares? He took off all the time. So we decided not to go keep picking him up. Well, which I found out isn't true. So after we found out what we did, I interviewed some of his friends and stuff. And the lady that lived across the street from them, I interviewed for probably 2 hours.
Wow.
And she is straightforward. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. And she's like, if I offend you, I apologize. I'm like, no, please do, because I want the truth. I don't want just rumors.
Right.
So her and I had a really good talk, because it was her son that ended up being common law marriage with my dad's oldest sister that lived in Boise that got him to Boise.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, which I was trying to figure out that for sure connection. So, yeah. So we got to talk really straightforward, not holding anything back. She told me what she knew. I told her what I knew. And she went, oh. She goes, that figures.
Starting to put the pieces together a little bit.
Yeah. So she's got a lot of the pieces she told me. And it matched a lot of things that I already kind of deducted on my own. But it just confirmed what I knew.
Right. I think it's interesting that you found your mom at 17 and he ran away when he was 16.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's kind of fascinating.
Is
you guys
that?
were right around the same age of, Winston running away, and you finding your mom kind of around that same age.
Yeah, I know. It's weird.
So he ran away, or he
Supposedly
ran away, right? I mean, I would think like after a few weeks, during that time, was there like any sort of like database of like runaway kids that you call and be like, my kid ran away, like any sort of like search? There was no sort of like investigation like a month into it, like, we don't know where Winston is, we're not going to make any phone calls to like sheriff, police, FBI, nothing?
Oh, no. I was the first
that
person.
Is crazy to me.
Yeah, I was the first person to report him missing in 2016.
Wow.
And because he's not legally on my birth certificate, though I have DNA proof he's my dad, the police couldn't do anything.
What? You were the first person. So from 1971 to 2016, nobody reported him missing?
No.
They just said he's probably like in Portland on a fishing boat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the thing I deducted all these years before we knew what happened was, and the only person that knew where he was his oldest sister.
Mm-hmm.
No one else knew.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't even really know though, right?
She knew.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you why, because it's still,
Yeah.
I can't let the cat out of the bag yet.
Yeah.
But no, she knew. And she was straightforward with me on several things that I can't say right now.
Yeah.
But no, she knew. But she told other people she had no clue. So that was part of this other person in my conversation that lived across the street from them.
Right.
So I had to let this person know, oh, no, this is what she told me. She's like, that makes sense.
Wow. So do you have other items of like your dad that he left behind or anything like that? So he really just like packed a bag and was like, I'm out of here.
Pretty much.
Wow. So your mom, the only thing she really has was just a picture of him?
She actually got that from his parents when she decided that she would tell them after she met me and saw that I kept my red hair, that she would tell them.
So if you had like
no
purple
clue.
Hair, she wouldn't tell him?
Who knows? Who knows? But you got to see, my mom had to live with this false story herself to protect herself.
Right.
Because back in the day, getting pregnant out of wedlock, it was not good. So here's another rumor. So I was told all these years that Daddy knew she was pregnant, but, whatever. Well, so there's two rumors. I'm going to side, on the one that I like and make it my thing. But it doesn't mean that's necessarily how it is.
Sure.
But from what I've been told by other people I've interviewed that knew both my parents was that they were dating. But they weren't supposed to be dating, I guess, or who knows.
Yeah.
But Mom has told the story. The story was she met my dad, was a one-night stand, they were at a party, blah, blah, blah. But from what I've talked to other people, they're like, oh, no, your parents were dating. I'm like, oh. So that put a whole new thought in my head. It was like, Oh, so some of these rumors that she's told me is now starting to make sense on why she said what she said. I think it was just easier for her to say, yeah, it was a one-night stand. That way she didn't get in as much trouble, is my opinion. It may not be correct. Now, she'll argue with me today on, no, it was a one-night stand. I'm like, that's not what I've heard. But
Right.
and she's like, who told you that? And I'm like, because she gets very defensive. And I'm like, so there's a little more truth to you and Daddy dating than what's said.
Right. So what made you, that's probably a dumb question, but what made you want to file a missing persons case?
First of all, no one knew where he was.
Right.
And how could someone, no matter if he was a troubled child or not, into drugs or not, which I found out he wasn't, but who would not report their child missing? Why didn't his siblings? I mean, a sibling could have even done it.
And they couldn't even have done it. They probably couldn't. They probably could have done it even without other people knowing it, right? You could just pick up a phone, and just I need to report my brother missing.
Right. Not only that, being a small town, rumors get going. Hence why we have a lot of these rumors. But those rumors always come back to one person. Well, two people actually, but really one person, which is his mom and his oldest sister. So, in a small town, you didn't want anyone knowing your business, but...
And is she still around today?
She is still alive, yes.
So what was the reaction when they found out you filed a missing persons case for Winston?
Well, I'll take you back a little bit. When I met my aunt, his oldest sister, in 2016 at a family member's funeral, I got to be careful with what names I release and don't. So this is kind of hard. So she told me where he was. She was very matter of fact, very looking me in the eye, and I'm like, okay. I'm keeping some of what she says in the back of my mind, going, this is really interesting. So she had one of her children with her. I had my youngest with me, and I'm like, So I didn't pursue too much of that because there were kids there. So I'm like, well, let's see. But she was very matter of fact about everything she told me, which completely surprised me. At that time, one thing I can say is she told me, all the rumors you hear about your dad, they're not true. Don't believe them.
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, wow. Someone who actually said he's not a complete piece of dirt. Yeah. And that was the first time I'd ever heard anyone say that. I'm like, wow, that's kind of nice. But I still was very hesitant because of some of the other stuff she told me. So I'm like, okay. So when I called to report him missing, I had to call. So no one knew exactly where he went missing. So I didn't know if I had to call Burley City Police or the county sheriff or Rupert City Police, because that's where they were living, was in Rupert, but they went to school in Burley. Or that county. Now, these two cities are next to each other, but they're separate counties. So I didn't know if I had to call the county where Rupert was. So right there's 4 different departments. But then again, I heard that they lived up towards Cary, Idaho, which is a little bit north of that, going towards Arco, which is where Craters of the Moon is. So I called also Cary Police Department and then had to go, okay, do I call the county sheriff in that one too? So then we're up to 6 different departments, 6 different jurisdictions. Then I thought, okay, I have to call NamUs, which is the, and NCMEC, which is the National Missing Exploited Children's. So there are 2 different databases. So I had to call them too. So what's that, total of 8 different? Yeah. So when I called, because I had just had enough, I'd had enough of not being able to track him down, had enough of people stonewalling me over the years. I finally went, red hair's coming to help. I've had enough, taking the bull by the horns, we're going. And if you don't like me, too bad.
Right.
Because, by then I was a mom, and I'm like, I have an older child who's not made the best decisions, and I still love her. And I've always told my kids this, it doesn't matter what you say or do, my love will never change for you.
Oh, we both have been down that road.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. So then I go, okay, now I have my dad who is supposedly not making wise choices. But as a parent, even more so. I mean, I didn't get it as a child looking for my parent, and more so as a parent looking now for my older parent. Why someone would not report their child missing or get the ball rolling if you never found him.
That part bothers me so much.
Blew my mind. And finally I had enough of justifying behavior and rumors, and finally went, that's it. Enough is enough. So I just did what I typically do when I don't get answers. I kind of show up in person, say hello. So their reaction was not very nice. So we went back to, as I told you, my aunt said, oh, don't listen to those rumors. He was a good kid, nothing wrong, typical teenager, never ran away, all this positive stuff. And I knew she meant it because of how she was looking at me, her tone of voice. And her body language never changed, and her tone never changed, even with some of the other information she told me. So I called, got the police involved, again, was told, because you're adopted, because I had to tell them I'm adopted. I don't want them to think, all this, and then all of a sudden the legalities come.
Right, yeah.
I want them to know up front I'm adopted. Good. This is my dad. I have DNA evidence. He is my dad. I said no one else has ever reported him missing. I need to get the ball rolling. So they were all doing what they could do, but was told, yeah, he's not on your birth certificate. Sorry.
But why is only people that you're related to you can file missing person cases?
I think it's just how the law is written. Now, that's not the case in every state or every city or jurisdiction, but it was there. And I don't think it's changed, but it could have changed. I haven't researched the laws in Idaho recently. But as far as I know, it's still law. But even if you have a best friend and that best friend doesn't have any family and you are their family per se, you still can't report them missing. Right. Or you can just say, hey, I haven't heard, but, I don't think it's looked upon as urgent because you're not a family member. But not everybody has family.
Yeah, that's just it.
So you call the sheriffs and the police. Like, how far does their jurisdiction reach? I mean, I feel like it's almost like, and you're looking for something or somebody from 30 years ago. It's like, I mean, I can't even, where do you, I guess you did the right, you're starting local and then you're going to expand your search out. Is that what your thinking was?
Yeah. I just needed to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And by that time I had already talked to Crystal Douglas, who is in charge of Idaho cold cases on Facebook. So she actually started a NamUs report for him, but it never went anywhere. For some reason, when we checked it after we found out what happened to him, she went back in and said, no, I made that. Yeah. It was still pending. And that was several years later.
Wow.
They never did release it.
Why? I
have no clue. It was still in the pending.
Government paperwork.
Probably.
Somebody forgot to push send.
So to get the ball rolling, so I called... It was NCMEC, so the National Missing and Exploited Children's. So I had a representative, told him my story. I'm adopted. He's not on my birth certificate. I know it might be an issue, but I need to get the ball rolling. I said, this is his older sister. This is her phone number you can call. This is my grandma. This is her name. This is her phone number you can call. And he said, well, okay, I'll call them and then I'll call you back.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that went over like a lead balloon. Right. So... I can't remember if he called me back. I think he called me back. I think it was a day or two later. It wasn't very long. But he said, well, we're not going to go forward with this missing report. And I said, why? What the heck is going on? He said, his family won't back you up.
Wow.
I said, are you serious? He said, yeah, they just say he was a drug addict and that he was a troubled teen and they know he's missing, but they're not concerned about where he's at. And I said, did his sister tell you that too? And he goes, yeah, both his mom and his sister said that. And I said, well, that's kind of funny because I told you before what his sister told me. And I said she might revert back to that story. And I said she reverted back to that story. And I said, she's lying to you. He goes, well, I can't do anything because if his legal family will not support this. You're not legally his daughter because he's not on your birth certificate.
Even though, okay.
Even though you have DNA.
Yeah, even though you get DNA, yeah.
And they knew it. I was upfront about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, sorry, I'm closing the case. And they closed the case. So that's, I don't know, we'll go probably down the road and talk about CC a little bit.
Yeah.
So what happens next? So you get that gets shut down. So what happens next? Because CC's coming up, right?
CC's coming up.
Yeah.
But that's 2021.
Okay.
This is 2016.
That's right, yeah.
So a few years later, Crystal allows me to go in periodically and make comments and stuff. And she posted my dad's case. I'm looking for my dad, never heard from him. And I had just assumed that back in the day, you could be called Fred. And, if I wanted to go by Fred back in the day, I was Fred.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need any proof.
That's true. You name yourself all day.
Yeah. And I could just say, hey, I'm from New York. I don't have a New York accent. That's where I'm from. It didn't matter back in the day. Whatever you were called, that's who you were. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you could make it up. You didn't have any identification or proof. You could just go in and say, this is me, and they could give you an ID pretty much. Mm-hmm. So I just assumed after all these years, since I couldn't find him, I couldn't get his Social Security number because I'm not legally his. Grandma wouldn't give it to me. His older sister wouldn't give it to me. So I said, okay, he must have just changed his identity and doesn't want to be found. Mm-hmm. And from what I'm learning about the family, I don't blame him. Yeah, I'd probably do the same thing. So that's kind of where I was. So I'm like, okay, so how old is he now? I'm how old? Okay, so I'd figure out our age difference. I'm like, oh man, I bet he's married. I bet he's got more kids. I'll have siblings. I'm probably even an aunt. So it's like, oh man, they said he was in the Army and a lot of our family went into the services. So I wonder if he actually went in the Army or what branch of service did he go into? Or did he? What does he like to do? How much are we alike? And, all this and that. And I found out by interviewing people that he was very well loved and liked, that he was small for his stature. He got bullied a lot. But if someone else was being bullied, he'd step in and get beat up for that other kid trying to protect him. Yeah, good guy. Always happy and smiling, even though his home life was completely the opposite. He would carry the books for the school girl. Well, let's put it this way. He'd carry the school girls' books home with them, if I can get that out. Yeah. So all the girls, I should say all, because they probably all didn't, but a lot of the girls had a crush on Daddy. Very handsome, and I get that from the post. So, man, he was good looking. Oh, he looks like a young, what is he called? Channing Tatum.
Yeah. He
saw that comment a lot. Yes, yeah. I kind of look, I'm like, similar, but he was a really, really good guy from what I hear. Very innovative. So one of the stories I was told by one of his friends was because the family didn't have a lot of money, he wanted to skateboard. Well, they didn't buy him a skateboard, so he took plywood, found his own wheels, and made a skateboard.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, man, that brain, what could it, what would he be doing? Yeah. Right. So he was a very good guy, not perfect. Right. Typical teen from what I've been told, maybe a little, I don't even like using the word rebellious because I think I'm a lot like him. I'm very driven. And I think my dad was a very driven person.
Yeah, that's a good definition for that. I like that.
So,
do you think it was maybe a little bit of guilt from your aunt and his mom not filing a missing persons case earlier that they didn't want to do, that they didn't want to help find them once you started looking into it? And, whenever you file, whenever they called and said, hey, this is what we are looking into, and they said, we don't want anything to do with it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, do you think it was anything for them feeling guilty about as why that they didn't want to pursue it or push much as you were doing?
It could be. Yeah. I'm not them. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, when you put this front up in this image and you tell all these stories or rumors or lies, whatever you want to call them, when you start living that, you start believing it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it would be, oh my gosh, I have to admit the truth. So it could be guilt, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know because I'm not them, and they totally reacted different than I ever would. I'm a very relational person. I love building and connecting relationships, and I think my dad was the same way. But I mean, I just handle things way different because I'm a connector. Relationships are important to me. So to have that relationship die, but to me, that's just really weird. Now, if you come to that mutual agreement, or if one person, hey, you're cool, Lori, but not my cup of tea. Okay, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. We don't have to be friends, But to have a family member just, I don't know, it's hard for me to swallow that.
Wrap your head around. Right. So if you said you weren't adopted, how soon? So like you call up one of those organizations, and if you just told them like, my name's Lori and my father went missing 1971, I'm trying to find him. And if you leave out the fact that you were adopted, like, do you think they would have investigated it, or do you think they would have pushed for like some sort of like evidence that you are his daughter?
That's a good question. I think they may have begun more of an investigation, but eventually I think it would have had to come to proof.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want them to think I was lying.
Right.
I wanted to be upfront from the get-go because I don't want to come back and bite me in the behind later.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's always better to be honest.
Sure.
Good policy.
Well, I was just curious. Like, I don't know how quick, the organizations move on looking for evidence. I don't know if they start looking into it and they're like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe the person that called in is not the actual daughter, and then let's go back to her looking for, I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know.
Yeah.
And I thought about doing that, but I'm like, I don't know how that works. And I would rather just be right up front.
Right.
And Crystal Douglas and I even had that conversation because she works with the police departments in Idaho a lot. And she's like, just be up front with them.
Got it.
You don't want that to come back later.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's true.
Good point.
Right.
So, but the police department in Cary, Idaho, I mean, you blink and you're through the town. It's like, did we?
Yeah.
Wait, all I see is desert. Did we? Okay. All right. Maybe that wasn't a little village. But the officer did call me back from there and said he did canvass the area. And he said, people remember your dad.
Oh, really?
And his family
wow.
From way back then. But he said they don't know anything. They don't know if they moved or what happened. And growing up, Grandma always liked moving. Okay. And I can give my opinion on why they always moved.
I was going to say,
but
that was my next question.
I won't go down that road. But they moved a lot, and they moved all over southern Idaho, and they moved to Arizona, and I think a few other places. But
interesting.
So,
shout out to the officer in Cary, Idaho, though.
Right.
Yeah.
The one officer.
Yeah, one officer.
It's probably the one officer.
Yeah. He was the only one that actually went and canvassed. Because I don't know if it moved his heart to hear my story or what, but he said, I went and did a canvas, and he said there were still people there that remembered the family and your dad. He said, but they don't know anything. They don't know if they picked up and moved or if what, because that was one of the many things which made it hard to track too, is because they were constantly moving.
Wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in 2016 now, right?
Right.
Okay. Make sure.
Right. Got the timeline.
Yeah.
Right. So 2016, you filed the missing persons case, having a hard time. Tried to. You're attempting to file a missing persons case. And then,
what happens next?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what happens next?
Reset the timeline here.
So what happens next is I moved to Cave Falls.
Okay.
In 2018.
Here we are.
For a fresh start.
There we are. Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so still searching. And I'm like, man, I am so tired. I'm not getting anywhere. Always the stone wall. I keep hitting my head against it. How much longer am I going to be dumb and think I'm going to get better answers? When am I going to stop hitting my head against that wall? And I had to take a really long, hard look at myself and go, all right, does your dad really want to be found? How much do you really want to know your dad? Mm-hmm. You're tired. You've got a lot going on. And I debated on if I should keep going.
Yeah.
And I thought, how long have I been doing this? So I did take about a 6-month break, which I hated doing because I take a break, then I'm like, I feel like I'm quitting or that I'm a failure and that I'm not going to pick it back up. But I've been doing it for 30 plus years. I'm like, okay, Lori, just take a break. Focus on something else, do something else, because you're burning your candles at both ends. You're not getting anywhere. Just regroup. It's okay. Take 6 months off. Take a year off. Who cares? Just take some time off.
Right.
So I took some time off, kind of delved in a few other things. Always thinking about my dad, though.
Right.
Always the mind's constantly moving. I'm like, okay, it's time to pick this up again. So I started, posting a little bit more on his Facebook page, Where in the World is Winston Maxey? Because somebody somewhere knew something.
Right? Yeah.
You can't tell me.
No one just disappears off the face of the planet. Yeah.
I'm sorry. And a lot of people believe in aliens. I do not. They don't just get taken and brought back.
Mark, we have a non-believer here.
Non-believer. That's right. It's a different podcast. Yeah.
I'll do that later.
Okay.
But I'm like, man, there's just, what is the reason?
Somebody had to see something.
Yeah,
Right.
someone saw something, someone knew something. And then it's the weirdest moments that come back to you and go, oh, remember what so-and-so said?
It's like a flashback, like a wave of
it's
emotion.
like, maybe I should pursue that. And it's just out of the blue for no reason. That subconscious throws something at you. I'm like, well, yeah, let me go down that road for a little bit. So, I stayed in touch with Crystal for throughout this time and thought, okay, let's do this again. I said, and I think she may have posted again. I can't remember, but she said, let's get the thing going. And I'm going, okay, so I'm doing a little bit. I'm just not as hardcore about it. I'm easing into it. So then we pop into 2021. And I'm driving back from Keno with my youngest. And all of a sudden, there's this call. My phone's ringing. I thought, what the heck? Because I usually have my notifications off, but I didn't. And it's popping up. Virginia. Who the heck do I know in Virginia? I'm like, I don't know anybody in Virginia. I'm like, I'm not going to answer this. It's probably one of those car warranties. Hey, your car warranty is just about expired for your whatever car. I'll be like, I haven't had that car in 10 years, but okay. So I'm like, curiosity got me. I'm like, sis, check and see if that person left a message. And they did.
Oh, boy.
So I'm driving, we just got past Dead Man's Corner and I'm coming around the other corner. I don't know if you guys know much about Keno and the road. No? Okay.
No.
So we're flipping through the other corner, coming back to Klamath Falls. I'm like, play that message for me. And I get this, hi, Lori, this is CC Moore from Parabon Nanolabs. I have some information that I'd like to talk to you about your birth dad. And she gave a message and told me to call her back. So I'm like, And my heart sank. I'm like, why is my heart sinking?
Right?
And you never taught this person before. You don't know who this is. No idea who this is.
And I'm like, Parabon Nanolabs, CC Moore, what the heck? Why does that name sound familiar? So I'm going, that name is just, but I couldn't place who CC was. I'm like, what the world? And sis is like, Mom, she knows about your birth dad. That's got to be great news. And I'm like, I looked at her, I said, no, sis, I don't think it is. I said, something just telling me it's not a positive phone call. And she goes, Mom, you need to be positive. So I'm like, okay. So we get home and it's mid-afternoon. I'm like, Virginia's how far ahead of us? So we get home and I'm thinking this and I pop onto the couch real quick and I'm typing in, I'm Googling CC Moore and she pops up. I'm like,
she's real.
That's who that is. So I had heard of her, through different whatever searches and roots and other things. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but I'm like, man, that name. So then I'm like, oh, that's who she is. Okay. And I'm like, but wait a second. I bet it's somebody else, impersonating her, because why would she call me? Yeah. She does genealogy. I already have my genealogy done. I mean, I know who my family is. Now, I haven't gone all the way back because I'm on Ancestry, did my DNA through them. I've got stuff I'm working on, and I just kind of whatever. But this person's calling me. So I'm like, either she's real or she's not.
All right.
Yeah.
And why would she be calling me? Of all people, why would she be calling me? So I'm like, okay, what time is it now? After I did some research, some quick video clips, getting to see who she is. So I'm like, okay, I think it was, actually, let me look. We'll get the right time because I saved the message. So she called.
Can you play the message?
I can. Do you want me to play it for you?
That would be awesome.
So,
I'm on the edge of my seat right now.
I know. I'm like, right.
Yeah, almost like, yeah.
Yeah.
So August 2nd, 2021, it was a 32-second message. Play it. Okay. Cece, I'm playing it.
Hello, this is Cece Moore. I am with Parabon Nanolabs, and I'm calling to talk to Lori. My number, I'm actually calling to talk to you about your biological father. Hope you can get back to me. I look forward to speaking with you. Thank you.
So I'm thinking, of course, I wasted time because I'm going, okay.
Well, I mean, I think that's a normal thing to do. I mean,
Wow. I would have investigated too. For something
absolutely. Well, right.
Yeah.
I mean, you're waiting to hear, and then someone called and said, hey, I'm calling about your biological dad. I mean, who wouldn't do a little bit of background research and be like, well, who's calling me from Virginia about my biological dad, who I've been looking for the last 30-something years, right?
Yeah. So I wasted time. So I don't think, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I waited, I don't know if it was 3:30 our time or 5:30, because I was waiting as long as I could, because I'm like, Virginia's like 3 hours ahead of us. So if it's real, I'll get her voicemail, and then I can just leave her a message, and she can call me back tomorrow.
Right.
So here I am dialing, and it rings once, maybe twice, and I hear, hey, Lori, it's Cece.
Wow. She's on the ball.
I'm like,
she knew.
Man.
Oh, no.
I was not expecting you to pick it up. Dang.
Did you not want her to pick up?
No, I didn't want her to pick up because I didn't know she was real.
Yeah.
And then if she was real, why is she calling me? There's no reason for her to be calling me. Which my heart sank, and I'm like, this is not going to be a good phone call.
Right.
No matter how positive my youngest wanted me to be, I just knew it was not going to be a positive phone call.
You knew.
There was just something there that's like, no. Yeah. So when she called me, I called her back. Like I said, hey, Lori, it's Cece. And I'm like, hi. She goes, yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about a John Doe we have out of Coos Bay, 1971. So all the stuff starts flooding.
Oh my gosh, that's how it's connected. Okay.
So that's how, So I'm like, oh my gosh. So here's Cece being the brilliant relational person she is. And all of a sudden she's like, we're talking. I'm like, she goes, well, I'd like you to upload your DNA if you wouldn't mind doing that for me into GEDmatch. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I forget how it came about, but she's like, are you not sure this is your dad? And I said, no, I don't think it is my dad. Now, Coos Bay, I said, his older sister did tell me that that's where he ended up going. But I don't think it's him. And I wouldn't admit it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. So 33 years of looking, and Cece calls. I'm like, okay, I'll upload it. So Cece and I talked for a total about 2 hours, a little more maybe.
Wow.
That first conversation.
Oh my gosh.
On that. So I uploaded my DNA, and it was just seconds. I wouldn't even say maybe 3 seconds. And there was a confirmed match that the John Doe was my dad.
Wow.
And was she on the phone with you?
She was still on the phone with me.
Oh my gosh.
So then she had done my whole, maybe I shouldn't say whole family tree, but she went back at least 4 generations, I think. And she keeps everything. She doesn't ever get rid of anything.
Yeah.
So she has all that.
Oh my God.
But her and I talked about the interesting facts of my DNA heritage and all that, which she was glad to have some of that because it helped her track down who my dad was. Yeah. And then it helped her connect me to him before the DNA. So she did his case study for her conference that following April. So it was April of 2022 for her conference that she gives every year, did his case study, and she had several hypotheses. She usually can do it within a couple days. It took her 3 months.
Wow.
To figure out, family, and because Daddy's family's from the South, so there's a lot of pedigree collapse or endogamy and other things that go on. Lots of close marriages.
Yeah.
So it's hard to break that apart genetically and build it back up. The one thing that stood out to her was someone in Daddy's family had Volga German in them. Well, they had moved. Volga German, I believe, was in the Ukraine on the Volga River. So the Germans were moved there. I forget what year it was now, but I think 1800s. Might be 1700s. I can't remember. And then they were starting to leave that area. I think because of World War II, if not before, there was a lot of turmoil. So they started moving over to the Idaho area or Canada. And so she was able to track down. That is one of the things that stood out to her was the Volga German. So she said, I always get into everything that I research. So she said, I learned so much about the Volga Germans on that. So she's going through and she's telling me all this and I'm listening, but it's like fully not registering because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that my dad
no kidding
was a John Doe in Coos Bay and how much I traveled when I was growing up with my family and how much I traveled as a single person before I had children. How many times I've been through Coos Bay.
Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
had
he
no
was
idea.
there the whole time. And then I go back to what his oldest sister said. I'm like, you knew this whole time where he was. Which also, so here comes all these emotions of happiness because I knew where he was, sadness because I wasn't going to build a relationship with him. I more than likely don't have any other siblings. At least none have popped up on DNA yet. So, and I'm just like, wow. And then all these other things from this subconscious come up that I hadn't thought of in years. And I'm like, I was so overwhelmed on that phone call. And probably, at least for the next week, things kept popping up from over the years and things started coming together and made sense.
Oh, the puzzle. Yeah.
I mean, even stuff from 1990. So my adoptive family had a friend, and he was a part of the gay underground. And I haven't told this, and I'm not going to say too much because it's an open investigation. Yeah. But it brought up a conversation he and I had about how they would target people back in the day and kidnap them. So I have all these things starting to pop up, and I was in bed for a week. I could not function. I was crying, I was laughing, I was angry. I mean, all these emotions. I didn't know if I should cry or hit somebody. It was horrible. And even now I'll just start crying for no reason, just because I'm still so overwhelmed with the emotion.
Oh, it was so recent too, finding that out.
Yeah.
So how did Cece connect that case to you, the John Doe to you? How did she know to call you?
Well, what happened was, so she can explain it far better than I can.
Right.
But so what she does is Parabon, Oregon State, Parabon Nanolabs has an exclusive right with the state of Oregon on DNA projects. Okay. So they take DNA samples from, John Doe's or Jane Doe's, and they pass them through to Parabon. Well, the state of Oregon has a grant that they use to do that. So once they get that genetic information, they go through saying what their height would have been, their coloring, their skin tone, eyes, hair, if they had freckles or not. I mean, they just break it down and they give you an idea, and then they do a composite of what the person may have looked like.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys saw that
I did, yeah.
in your research, but so then what she does is she starts looking because they couldn't find any missing person. Now, at the time that my dad went missing in Oregon, there were 11 other teenage males that had gone missing about that same time.
Right.
In just Oregon or in Coos Bay?
Coos Bay area.
What?
So there were 8 or 9 out of Coos Bay itself. And then there was another, during that time, there was another 3, they said local, or area. So did that include Coos Bay or was that just the counties within there?
Douglas County's close by too.
Right.
Yeah, so there were a total of 11 kids, and I know that because of the articles when they printed out still trying to ID teenage body.
Yeah.
From 1971, they're still trying to ID who he was. That has a small blurb at the end of one of them that there were, I think, 8 or 9 local kids missing, and then 3 more local area kids missing. So a total of 11 teenage males missing at that time. And someone did reach out to me a year later who got picked up by a serial killer and actually got out of the car and made it. I won't name any names because he won't say anything else to me. I was surprised he told me as much as he did. So we did have at least one serial killer in that time,
of course,
up in that area. But I think there was more than one, and I think there was people working together. But that's just my opinion.
So, of course, I'm going to ask, do you think that's a plausible cause of death? I mean, do you think your dad might have been part of those serial killings?
Yes and no. It depends what you mean by serial killings. Because when we talk about serial killer, we have our, how do I want to word this? We have our idea on what a serial killer is today compared to what it was back then, and it morphs. But let's just take this for an example. When you have trafficking and you're going across state lines and you're working with other people, or even in another country, if those products don't obey, then you snuff them. Well, they would be considered a serial killer. But we don't look at trafficking perps or offenders that way. But they themselves are serial killers, and they work together. So there's different, what I would call, just in my opinion, different types of serial killers out there. So yes, he was probably, unfortunately, hooked into a subgroup of people at that time. But I can't say too much.
Yeah.
Probably the difficult part because, I mean, do you want me to say how he was found back in 71? Yeah,
you can.
Because I've read this from so many different articles. You're right. So many different newspaper and websites and that kind of stuff. So he's found on a Sunday in July 1971. He was discovered face up in Sneddon Creek in Coos Bay. He was found, his pants were off in a distance. He was found by 3 younger guys that were moving horses from one pasture to another, and it was on private property.
Yes, that's how they found him.
Yeah.
So when I went down to the location, I was told about where it happened. Now it's private property still, so I could not get on it. There was nobody home. But where I had to look from the road at different angles. But where I could get to, there was a spot where you could drive down to, and I was told back in the day that's where everyone went and partied. So I was told a lot of things happened down there and back in the day. Now it's really, when I went up there, I thought, okay, how did this look in 1971?
Yeah, right.
Because right now it's overgrown in some areas. I was told they backfilled a lot of the slough with dirt. So it doesn't look the same.
Of course.
So you have to get aerial photos, and they do that every 10 years. But anyway, you have to look at how it used to be. And back in the day, that was considered country. That's part of Inglewood out there in Coos Bay, a suburb. And so here's another interesting thing. So the kids that found him One of them died drowning within a month of finding him. I think that's a little suspicious.
That's
A
wild.
little sus to me.
Yeah.
One of the other kids,
A little?
a lot.
A month after he's found?
Uh-huh.
So he was found in 1971, is that right?
In July
So he was a
26th.
John Doe since 1971.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole time you were looking for him?
Mm-hmm.
50 years.
Yeah. So he was a 50-year John Doe, and I'd been looking for him for 33 years because I found I was hoping, actually, when I paid Mr. X that money, I didn't know that was just going to be my maternal side of the family. I was expecting paternal information. And it come to find out, until I can get my original birth certificate, which I've been fighting for since I was 17 also,
Crazy.
still fighting Idaho for that.
It's just crazy to me that.
Yeah.
So who reported him? Like who? So somebody found his remains in
Yeah,
1971.
3 boys, which one of them drowned. You said the other one or something?
The other
two?
one, he passed away. He became an alcoholic,
Okay.
drank himself to death. And I don't think he was very old. I can't remember. I've looked all this up.
Yeah.
I think he was in his 30s, maybe 40s when he passed away, but I think he was in his 30s. Well, why do you drink yourself to death?
Right.
Yeah.
There's got to be a connection somewhere. In my opinion, that's just too coincidental that all of a sudden these 3 boys find him on their property, moving horses or cows or whatever they were moving, to say, okay, we found this body, and now they're having issues or have passed away. But why didn't they see his body before? Why didn't they see his pants before?
Yeah, because he decomposed a bit.
He was,
Yeah.
So the medical examiner thinks he had been there for anywhere between a month and 6 months, 5 months or 6 months. But from the timeline we have put together through our own investigation, he left in April of 71, and he was found July 26th of 71, and I was born in June of 71. So from what we can gather, he'd probably been dead maybe 3 weeks. Because you have to think of salt water.
Yeah, summer too,
Summer, but it gets cold at night.
Yeah, true.
So it just depends what, the microbes and all that and how hot it was getting. So I have binders full of the tide and the weather and if it rained or was misty and all that. So I have several binders full of that stuff to help.
So you get the phone call from Cece.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you do with that information? Do you then call Winston's family and say, this is what I've been told? Or do you say they don't care? Why even bother telling them?
Well, what we did, Cece called me because they thought because she's worked with adoptees and she knew how boisterous I was about trying to find my dad. She followed me and I kept everything public.
Right.
And I kept my personal page public. It is now private. But so she would follow me and she knew that I would be devastated. So it was between the medical examiner's office and law enforcement that she was probably the best one to reach out to me. And that's why she did.
That's sweet.
Because she's worked with adoptees before.
I see.
So that's why she reached out to me. And so what happened from there was she said, well, I'll let everybody know.
Oh, so she made the phone calls herself too?
Well, what she did is she let the agencies know.
Oh, I got it.
And then the agencies reached out to me. And then the agencies double-checked all the information that Cece had and I had to make sure they were right and correct. And then the sheriff's department reached out to family because I was not going to do it.
Right. Man.
I don't think I could have done it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? That's heavy. It's a burden.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you went to Coos Bay after the fact just to get...
I went to Coos Bay in April of 2022 because I wanted to see where my dad was. I wanted to meet the detective and people. And I'm still doing my own research. I go back up there periodically and I interview people. And sometimes it's on the phone or a Zoom, but I try and do everything in person as much as possible.
Right. So do you still get a lot of people today that say, I think this is what happened to your dad?
Right?
Oh, yeah. constantly.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, constantly.
Really?
I'm waiting to talk to somebody right now from the area because there's always rumors.
From the Coos Bay area?
Mhm. So there are rumors on what happened to my dad.
Wow.
So I will be talking to those people and just, same thing. You got to take it with a grain of salt because you don't know. But like I said, there's always a little bit of truth somewhere woven into those rumors. So compared to what I know and the evidence I have compared to what the rumors are, it'll be easy for me to dissect those and know what's true and what isn't. So I want to know all the rumors, positive or negative.
Right.
And most of them are negative. Most of them are way out there and very bizarre.
Right.
But I want to know them because that helps me solve his case.
Right? Because it was on private property.
Mm-hmm.
That part's the wildest part for me. Because I don't own a lot of property. I own a house. I'm like on a quarter acre, but I know every corner of my lot. So if something's going to be on it, But that part's wild. And then I don't like that there was the other missing ones at that age because she's right. Every newspaper article I read,
I know
it's just debunking one at a time. It's not one of these kids that were missing.
Right.
And they found one of the boys on the opposite side of Coos Bay, right? In a different area.
Almost on the opposite side. So if you take, I won't give the street names, but if you take the general area where my dad's body was found, you go north and then you go east. It actually was found not too far from where I was staying. I rent a house when I go to Coos Bay. It was near I believe the college at the time. He was found in sand dunes upside down.
Wow.
He was partially buried upside down.
There's got to be a correlation to all of them.
That's just, that time frame is just wild. And then,
it makes too much, it doesn't make sense, but it makes too much sense at the same time.
Right. So stuff has to start adding up, but you're right. You got to take a little bit of piece. You have the hardest part of this, building this puzzle because every story you get one little nugget, this one puzzle piece,
Yes.
And then how to stay sane.
Right. Yeah.
Through
Who said I was sane?
Right, sifting through all the junk and the crap, or how do you believe what anyone even tells you about what happened to somebody from 1971? That would drive me nuts, man.
Right? Yeah.
And then even if my dad went missing and they found his remains, I don't know what would be worse, not knowing he was still out there or knowing he was found and I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah. You
both
tell
me. It's the not knowing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It just opens up a whole other,
Now, I'm glad to have his remains. I actually have his remains.
Oh, wow.
And that typically doesn't happen. So I think I'm the first person in the whole world that's ever done that because of DNA, even though legally it wasn't my dad. Legally, he's my dad, but not on the paper.
Right.
Because of DNA, they released him to me. And they felt that I was the only person that should receive his remains because I was the one doing all the work. I'd been looking all these years. No one else cared. Or at least that's how I look at it. No one else reported him missing.
Wow.
So
what do you think your dad would be doing nowadays if he never went missing or ran away or?
Oh gosh, who knows with that mind of his and how driven he was. I mean, I'm thinking it could be anything. I mean, he could be building all these fantastic homes or he could have gone in the service.
Right.
Gosh, he could have been part of the high tech boom back in the day, back in the 80s. Even actually that started way back in the 60s, really.
Right.
It didn't come to fruition until the 80s, but who knows what he could have been doing. Yeah. But
do you have conversations with him?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Still talk to him. Still struggle, you know. So, Daddy, am I doing the right thing? Do I really need to know what happened to you? I have a pretty good idea. I pretty much know what has happened.
Right.
I don't say, though, because I want those puzzle pieces to fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
so
sure.
People go, oh, that's just conjecture. Well, no, it's not conjecture. I've got this and this and this.
Yeah.
So I want to, and a lot of people think I'm out for justice, but there's no such thing as justice in this realm, in this life. You'll never have it. No one can ever bring my dad back.
Yeah.
That would be justice. Justice would have been allowing him to live. Yeah. And I can tell you this, he did give his life up for somebody else. So he lost his life so someone else could live. But that's all I can say. So.
Well, that's a cliffhanger.
Wow.
And hopefully I'll be able to release more of that down the road, but just right now I can't.
Well, the page you run is Who in the World Murdered Winston Maxey, right? So is that where people would find out more information about him and your case and his case? Is that kind of where is that where you're kind of putting the information out there? If people wanted to follow along to like your story and his story?
Yeah, they can follow on his Facebook page.
Okay.
And I post on there his stuff, little tidbits about my adoptive family.
Yeah,
so they
I've
can
seen
try
some
and personally
pictures.
get to know me a little bit.
I love that.
Some of my birth family information, the stuff they'll allow me to put on there because they're very private people.
Sure, that's understandable.
And, with Mom, it's still overwhelming for her.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I got a text, and I'll read you the text real quick that I got from her. Well, if I can find where I put it. So this is something I told her is I wanted to tell you in person, but I wasn't able to make it. But Daddy did love you and was excited for the baby, a.k.a. me. He carried a small photo of you in his wallet, which they never recovered. And it was one of those nano photos back in the day. I don't know if you remember those little itty bitty photos that they used to have. Yeah, it's like a thumb photo. And he carried a cross charm. And that wasn't recovered either. His pockets were cleaned out.
Oh, wow.
So, and she says, I hope they find the person or persons that did this to him. I said, I hope so too. It doesn't bring him back, but it helps bring us closure. And she said, I wonder why, who did this to him. I want to know why.
Yeah.
And she screamed, why?
Yeah.
So, Mom wants to know.
Yeah.
Why would someone do this to probably not just him, but another person? And I think about that all the time. I mean, you got to be pretty heartless and cold to snuff out somebody's life. Senseless. And they can't determine how he died, but from what I can gather, it was a pretty violent death.
I would imagine so.
A very violent death. So it's hard to know why someone would treat another human being that way.
Doesn't make sense.
No. So it's tough. She has a hard time.
Right. Well, I hope you find... I hope we find the right truth out there. The truth is out there, Lori.
It is out there.
You also do volunteer work for something called undercover.com?
I do. I volunteer with undercover.com. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I'll get to my notes so I can tell you the right thing. So there are actually over 250,000 cold cases in the United States alone.
Wow.
So we are the largest database that covers not just missing and identified, but we are the only database that covers murdered cases out there. So that's one thing. And we also have a timeline. So when we start putting stuff together, now not all of them have a timeline, but we try and get a timeline so you can see, where they left from, people they may have talked to, and it'll take you step by step their last day or the last moments they were heard.
Yep.
So someone might go, oh yeah, I talked to them. That wasn't the last person that talked to him. I did. So then they'll contact us. We'll verify the information, and then we'll upload it.
Wow.
But yeah, Uncovered, it's a fantastic place. We call people, it's for anybody. So if you like true crime and you're like, ooh, I want to solve this case, you can track any case in the country that we have uploaded right now. We're still working on uploading. We got about 50,000 cases there right now. But you can go in there and become a citizen detective, and you can help try and solve these cases. So,
oh my gosh.
Hello.
A rabbit hole.
Man.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing work.
So, and Daddy's case is on there. He's got a timeline. That way you can go and see, this is what happened.
What's been done.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's I don't know if I want to say it's kind of fun, but for those true crime buffs, they're like all over that. And it's a great community because you can say, hey, I'm stuck with this. Does anybody? So we have people from all different backgrounds. We have retired detectives on there. We have entertainers on there. We have a whole bunch of a plethora of people from different walks of life that come together and try and solve cases. And if you want to learn how to do it, there are people that will walk you through it. So it's pretty exciting. And it's one thing that I'm very thankful for.
Yeah. And what's it called again?
Uncovered.com.
Uncovered.com. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. And if they wanted to get a hold of you for anything, questions or comments, or what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Try. They can email me at Winston Arthur Maxey Foundation at gmail.com.
Perfect.
They can get a hold of me through the Facebook page, or they can snail mail me at P.O. Box 621, K Falls, Oregon 97601.
All right.
Lori, is there
Wow.
anything else you want to say?
Yes, I would love to. The one thing I really want to say is, you asked me the question, if Daddy was listening, what I would want him to know.
Yes.
So I'm going to try and not cry.
No.
Me too.
Yeah.
I want him to know that I'm living my life because you didn't get to live yours, and that your legacy lives on. So, and I'll do my best to solve his murder. And it may not ever happen, but I'm going to try my darndest.
Beautiful.
Okay. Well, I don't even know how to ask about the dinner party question now because I'm tearing up.
Yeah, I was gonna
Oh,
say,
you can.
Yeah.
No, we'll ask it.
Yeah.
We'll ask it. If you can invite 3 people to a dinner party, live or past, who would you invite?
See, that's a tough one because I like people.
This is one of my favorite questions. Yeah.
So I went 3, only 3. Oh my goodness. So one would be Princess Diana,
Oh, that's a good one.
Whitney Houston.
Oh, good one too.
And of course, everyone I've chosen has passed. And then the last one was a toss-up. So I'm choosing 4 instead of 3 because I'd like to have both of my dads
Oh, I love
at the
that.
table with
Lovely.
me.
We're okay bending rules around
That's a
here.
good one. That's a good one.
I'm writing 2 books.
Are you really?
Yes.
Really?
I am writing 2 books. I'm writing my biography,
Okay.
which is going to take a little bit to come out.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of waiting. I'm trying to decide if I want to write it and have the ending to Daddy's
Yeah.
Mhm.
murder solved in it, or if I
Yeah.
want to do like a sequel type
Yeah.
biography.
Yeah.
But I also do self-growth.
I love
So
that.
we're working on
that.
a self-growth book
Love
right
it.
now. So
Who doesn't need some self-growth, right?
Right.
Yeah,
All
we
the
all do.
time.
Lord,
All the
we
time.
all do.
so I thought I'd share that also.
I love it. I could probably talk to you all day, Lori.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I'm actually really quite boring.
No, this
It's
is
Daddy's story that's taken it to newer levels.
well, you've
It's your pursuit, though. It's
You've-
the people who ask
right.
the questions and who follow up and follow through are that's the important piece.
right. I'm almost speechless, but
I am. I thank you so much. That's all we can say. Is Thank you
Right.
so much for your time
Right.
and sharing your story.
And,
this.
And yeah, if you want to get a hold of our show, it's Oregon Files Podcast at yahoo.com. Episodes go out on YouTube. You can get it anywhere where you get podcasts, on the Instagram page on Oregon Files Podcast on Instagram. There's a little link on the bio. There's also a little link out there called Buy Me a Coffee if you want to make sure me and Mark aren't poor anymore and want to help us keep our mics on. And we just appreciate everyone listening, and hopefully everyone hears Lori's story today and maybe gives her a little bit of clarity and helps her out too. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Cheers.
Thank you.